Hunt 'em Big with Steve Bartylla. Brought to you by
regardless of if we actually control our own hunting ground or we don't have access to anything solely to ourselves, public land in most areas is a tremendously underused resource. Yeah, those areas right around the parking areas, some of them, a lot of them, are absolutely overrun. But don't let that dissuade you. Instead, dig out your Hunt Stand app, dig out a topo map, and study that area. What you're looking for is areas that everyone else is leaving alone. I can tell you from my own experience, there's a public land spot that's less than 5 miles from my front door. I went ahead and shot a 3.5-year-old from a handful of years ago now. Geez, it's nothing more than a couple acre pocket of woods of cover right next to the road. Bunch of swamp grass and then the big timber. Guess where everybody heads? I mean, heck, I was listening to 2 guys rattling at each other while the buck I shot crossed the swamp grass to the little tiny pocket that he found that he's left alone in. Okay. Those overlooked areas, I've taken a handful of bucks from spots like that over the years. Next, look for those barriers that we don't want to cross. Water. If you can't cross it with just plain knee-high rubber boots, we leave a lot of people behind simply by putting on a pair of hip boots. If you got to wear waders, man, you've just left even more behind. You got to drag out a canoe. Corps of Engineer land along the Illinois River. That Corps of Engineer land is wide open to hunting. And man, are there ever a lot of hunters there. You bring in a canoe, you canoe out to one of those islands before first light, and you literally listen to the deer crossing the river to get out to you, and you got that place all to yourself. You're in a situation where there's another public land spot actually in Illinois, this Girl Scout camp. It's 640 square acres with 2 huge ridges. I'm sorry, 3 huge ridges. You know, ridge running right down the set. You get to that, you're hunting on either of those first 2 ridges, you see everybody in their breath. You get to that center ridge, yeah, your lungs burn, but man, do you ever have that to yourself. Clear cuts, those 4 or 5-year-old clear cuts that are just aspen after aspen, so tight you can barely get through. You get to the backside of that clear cut, you got that. Unless there's another way to access it from the other side, you got it all to yourself. And how does a buck get to be mature on those properties? Any heavily hunted property there is. They get to be mature by spending the majority of their daylight hours where we're not. Those areas become sanctuaries that draw deer like absolute magnets. Outside those areas, those whitetails hardly move at all during daylight, but inside, they feel as safe as in their mama's arms, and they move like crazy. Study those features, find those areas that other people leave alone, and if there's a ridiculous number of people out hunting that ground, and you can find 20 acres that's by yourself, I guarantee you're going to find where the overwhelming majority of those deer are. They're on that 20 acres.
Final thoughts, brought to you by Huntworth.
Whether you own land, whether you lease land, whether you're hunting on an uncle's farm, whatever, it is so incredibly valuable to have backup plans. And public ground is a great backup plan. It is so much of that ground has gotten such a bad rap. And yeah, there's areas that every yard ape and their brother and sister are going ahead and tromping around in. But if you can find the areas they're not, those people tromping all over the place, they end up becoming your best friend. because they take those deer and they concentrate that activity in those sanctuaries that most of them aren't going to find and hunt those, and you're actually hunting some of the most pressured public grounds in the world pretty much all by yourself.